Share my screen and we will be rocking and rolling. Okay.
Knowledge.
What does this look like on your end, you guys?
They're probably seeing what we're seeing, right, Kelly?
I have a couple different screen views right now going on, so I want to make sure that you can't see my next slide. Are you only seeing the main slide right now?
I can see your notes and next slides, Kelly.
You're seeing the notes too?
Yeah, but there's no notes, but I can see your next slide.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to avoid here. All right, let me fix that. All right. Oh, got a couple people still joining in here. We're gonna give it about 2 minutes, you guys, so we can get everybody in here. What are you guys seeing now?
I see the full screen interview skills, Office of Career Services. So hopefully people can see that as well.
Beautiful. So you can't see all my little slides or anything.
That's what I see. So I don't know. Lynn, what do you see? Good now. Okay, good.
Yes, I see the main slide, so you're good. You're good.
Oh, wonderful. And if I can advance the slides, we'll really be rocking it. Okay. So here we go. Let me just double check. We got nobody waiting here. Welcome everybody. So I'm Kelly Coughlin. I'm the Senior Career Manager here at the Office of Career Services within the Costello College of Business. And I am here with Lynn, who will introduce herself in a second here, and Daryl from RMA Associates, a big friend of ours, and you will see him on campus a lot. In fact, there have been a couple of coffee chats. Daryl, do you still have another coffee chat coming up?
I think I have one October 29th, if I'm not mistaken. So
okay, we can. I'll look that up while we're chatting and post that in our chat here. So if folks want to join in one-on-one. So as you all know, the Office of Career Services is here to help you with interview skills and resume writing and cover letters and all things in between to help you find employment. And I've invited Daryl here, who will introduce himself and talk a little bit about RMA Associates.
You ready?
Take it away, Daryl.
Okay, sure. So I'm the only recruiter with an RMA. I've been with the firm for 3 years now. We're a mid-size / larger federal consulting firm. So the folks that we service are basically government agencies that are related to Department of Defense, Homeland Security, law enforcement. We have a plethora of different civilian agencies that we work with as well too. And in terms of the services that we provide, IT audits, your traditional financial statement audit, which is our largest arm or sector that we have within the firm. And then we have what we call performance audits. So those are looking at internal controls within a federal agency or government agency and figuring out how we can best improve their efficiencies, make them more cost effective for the taxpayers. So the work that we do and the students that we draw from are those who are interested in doing meaningful work that make an impactful, what should I say, impactful vision and result for not just the taxpayers of the U.S., but also internationally as well too. So been in the workforce I was calculating this morning, Kelly, and it's 30 years I've been in the workforce. Good gracious.
Wow.
But to retire soon, I think. Anyways, yeah, so I guess one of the things I'd like to ask the students is, what are your takeaways from this session? Why did you join? What things are you looking for? So maybe we can get into that so we can be more specific in terms of how we assist going forward as well too. So
Yeah, if anybody wants to pop in the chat, kind of what you're hoping to get out of this session. And of course, if there's any questions specifically for Daryl, you can pop those in there too, and we'll answer as we go along. So this is the interview skills workshop. You know, what's so nice about Daryl joining us is that he's here to kind of give you that firsthand perspective of, from an employer perspective, you know, what does this look like? So we're going to go over some best practices, good answers, good, bad, and the ugly, right, Daryl? I'm sure you've seen it all. So we want you to learn from the experts here. So we will continue on. So let's see here. Did that slide advance for you guys? Beautiful. So we'll talk about the different types of interviews, preparing for an interview, answering questions using the STAR method, which some of you might be familiar with. That is your situation, task, action, result. Sample interview questions. What are the challenging ones? Well, how can we best answer those? What to bring, what to wear, and how do we follow up afterwards? Okay. So I'm interested, Daryl, from your perspective. Obviously, there's different types of interviews. I've certainly had like the phone screening followed by an in-person interview with these people, or a virtual interview, and then you come into the office. What's kind of the practice that RMA uses?
So we've got a very simple process. The first one is an initial virtual with myself. So that's with camera, kind of what we're doing today.
Yeah.
And then if everything goes well, then I would set up an in-person interview in our office, which takes about an hour and a half. 3 interviews, 3 individuals, 20 minutes each, and then we make a decision. Now, if the individual is, let's say, going to school in North Carolina, then we would do the virtual as the final interview. So virtual and in person. No phone. I never do a phone interview.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't give me the soft skills that I'm looking for: energy, enthusiasm, eye contact, all those things. And
Sure. Okay. You know, so I've walked into, I will say, the toughest one I ever did was I walked into the interview and I was told I would interview one-on-one with my supervisor, and then I'd get to meet the team. And instead, I think I chatted with the supervisor for 5 minutes, and then we walked into a boardroom surrounded by their staff, and they all fired questions at me for an hour. Not what I had envisioned when it was meeting the team.
like that's a mega panel, right?
Right. I did get the job, so I
There you
must
go.
have
Fire
handled
away.
it all right. Right, exactly. How do you perform well under pressure, right? And pivot when that's not what you're expecting. So, and also too, just so folks know, I will be sending out this PowerPoint afterwards, so you don't feel like you have to memorize every single slide. And if I go through some faster than others, just again, know that you will see this information again, so don't worry. So we want to make sure that we prep for interviews. And Daryl, I know that we have had this conversation before, because when you go to, even if it's an informational interview, it's not a formal interview, you should have done some homework so that you're not, you know, meeting with Daryl and saying, what does RMA do? I know nothing about your organization. So as you may remember, we had that conversation. You did do some coaching with a student of ours who then used that information and really nailed their next interview with the next company and was able to get that job. But we want to just make sure that we're doing our research and our homework, showing that we're so interested in working for that company. We've done that background search and know what we're talking about. Daryl, thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue that I run into, or biggest challenge, I should say, with students is that's one of the first questions I'll ask, right? We'll do a little, you know, breaking the ice, whether it's, you know, informal or formal, depending on, I gauge the person's sort of, what's the word, their behavior, their personality. But the first thing I said, well, tell me, why did you apply to RMA? What do you know about us? And most people will have a list of things. I send them information before the actual interview itself. So hopefully they've done their homework. I mean, I kind of give them the answers, right? So, but then I get some students to say, well, I think you guys are in Arlington. Ah, so well, hold on. Let me go out. Let me check out the window just to make sure that we are in Arlington. Yes, we are in Arlington. What else do you know about us, right? So that's right then and there. You pretty much lost me, right? So knowing something about the firm is so important. Whether it's RMA, EY, Deloitte, whoever it is that you're interviewing for, take the time to research. You guys, here's the beauty. When I was and Kelly, you probably remember this. When I was searching for jobs, I'd have a stack of resumes, cover letters, envelopes, and stamps. I would mail out my resume in the letter, and hopefully get a phone call back. Now, if I did get the interview, I would have to go to the library to do research on the company. You have it at your fingertips now. There's no excuse, right?
Right.
So no excuse.
One of the questions relating to this, which I think is good, says, additionally, how do we research the organization in the best way? Because some organizations have numerous projects that are going on. So are we supposed to be well versed in like every project that company is doing, or should they focus on one or two, or what's the best answer there?
Just the overarching what the company does, right? So with RMA, you're federal consulting, you service the government in 3 different areas: IT audits, financial statement audits, and performance audits. If you gave me that, you're golden. Thank you, right? So now there's a difference as well. If you're applying to the position, I kind of expect you to know about the company because you reached out to me. Now, if I reach out to you and I sourced you and said, hey, I'm interested in speaking to you about an opportunity with an RMA, and if you don't know much about us, it's okay, right? Because I reached out to you. So there's 2 differences there. 2 which is important.
Gotcha. Perfect. All right. So we're going to research the company, know what we're talking about. Certainly some opportunities for where we can find this information would be their company website, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Handshake. There's some like salary range stuff that we can be researching here, and a bunch of other tools.
Kelly, can I say, Indeed is a big one as well too. In fact, most of the recruiters that I know use Indeed and LinkedIn. Glassdoor is good to look at the company's internal feedback and review, right? So you learn about culture. There's reviews from either existing employees or former employees. So it gives you a good understanding of what you're going into and if that's the right fit for you. So Glassdoor is an excellent way to look at internal stuff.
So we've already kind of talked about this research, but you're not only going to research the company, but you're going to be well versed in the position itself, right? I know that one of the important things is if you're like me, you've applied for dozens and dozens and dozens of jobs. And so it's really important to kind of track those jobs. And also to make sure that you're saving somewhere that job description, because if they take that job down, and then you're interviewing for it and you're trying to rack your brain like, oh my gosh, what did I say I did? I don't remember what this particular job was. Now the company has called me and I'm not really sure which role it was. So we want to make sure we're doing a good job of tracking that. Again, even if it's just a screenshot of what that job announcement looks like, just so we have it for future reference so that you are tracking, whether in an Excel spreadsheet or whatever, to know what did you apply for, what was the position, what did that job description look like, and then when you're doing your research before the interview, review that job description. And one of the easiest ways to create, somebody had said, what's the best way to come up with star statements? I like to look at the job announcement, and for every bullet point that they're looking at, be able to answer the question, tell me of a time you, right? So let's say they're looking for advanced Excel. Tell me of a time that you used advanced Excel features and how were you successful? If they're looking for, let's say, Tableau, Power BI, whatever it is, communication skills, be able to answer that question. Tell me of a time you did this. That's like one of the best ways to prepare for an interview. Just look at that job description, and for every bullet point, be able to come up with a story, which is clear and concise, of a time that you used that skill. You can research the trends and the major issues in the industry, I just showed you some of the salary websites that you can use, because a lot of times, unfortunately, that job posting will not list the salary. So there's some research you can be doing, and if you have that discussion with them, obviously that shouldn't come up right away. Sometimes I've had it in screening phone calls where they say, here's the salary, are you okay with that? Now let's go forward with the interview. Other times you get through the interview, and kind of wait till you get that offer, and then you kind of get in that negotiation phase. But this will give you, at least a range and stuff that you should be targeting and looking for. Anything to add there, Daryl?
No, that's all good stuff. I'm always leery if companies don't list salary. I mean,
Right.
it's give a range, right? That's what we usually do. We usually have a $5,000 range in between. So there's some states now that require that you list salaries. I'm not sure if Virginia and Maryland are one of included in that, but I think they are. So if you don't see salary, just kind of be leery. I don't know. Most companies do. And I guess at some point we'll talk about like negotiation tactics at the end, Kelly.
Yep.
Yeah. That's where you don't spill all your beans. So.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Hold some things close to the vest until you get to the end there. Okay, so what questions will I be asked? How do I prepare? Again, look at the job description, review each bullet point, be able to tell a story like we just said. So for example, if there's something in the job announcement that talks about research or presentation and public speaking, here's an example. And again, keep in mind, especially as students, maybe you don't have a ton of work experience in this field, but maybe you've done a case study as part of your schoolwork, right? Or your projects, let's say you did a presentation in front of the class, really showing a deep understanding of the materials. So in this example, in my consumer behavior class, I was part of a team of 5 researching marketing strategies used by Ford and the implications and internal external influences on a marketing campaign. We created an interactive PowerPoint, presented our findings to 45 students and faculty, and I really enjoyed working in a team environment and honing my public speaking skills. So that is an example of how you have used research, presentation, public speaking, and teamwork. Okay, and again, this does not have to, and I'm sure Daryl, you see this too, this doesn't have to come from paid experience. Nobody's expecting you to have 15 years experience for an entry-level job and be able to use all these references that are necessarily workplace related. Do you think that's true, Daryl?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's so many skills. Like I interviewed someone that was a barista at Starbucks for 3 years. In terms of public speaking and presentation skills, you're constantly in the public, right? So
right.
Utilize, as Kelly said, your class experience, case studies, and also even if the position isn't related to the actual position of the job itself, there's something relatable that you can use from, your real world experience to relay that message. Telling a story is so important. We can kind of get into that when you get that question, why should we hire you, right? You'll probably get that. So, but telling a story, it's almost like sales. And when I bring up sales, people are like, well, I'm not a salesperson. I'm an accounting student. Well, for the next 3 months while you're looking for a job, you're basically a salesperson. You're selling yourself.
Yep.
You have to be comfortable with that sort of, putting yourself out there. I want to take back the word job as well, too. I hate that word. Job is an acronym for just over broke. You'll never be happy, right? Use the word career in place of job. So I have to remember that as well.
I also too, so here's some common questions, but kind of to Daryl's point, we're talking about the barista. There are so many transferable skills. This kind of overlaps too with when I find students trying to chop stuff off their resume to make it onto one page. And I'm going for this RMA position. So I'm going to take off the barista part. And we don't want to see that. I mean, if you can fit, that's fine. If you've had like all these great internships that are more related and you're going to cut off some older work experience, but when you get into the customer service types of things, anything that required you to think on your feet, do conflict management, conflict resolution, You know, not everybody's happy when they walk into Starbucks or into the restaurant you're working for, all that kind of stuff. If you have that ability to build rapport and calm people down and make sure they leave happy, and that's something you're going to use in any job environment. So with that, again, I'm not a big fan of chopping stuff off the resume, especially because I think there's just so many wonderful transferable skills that you can really make the case for and use some of them in these common questions and answers. So tell me about yourself. Daryl, you had mentioned that one earlier. You know, what's one of your weaknesses? Why do you want to work for us? Tell me about a time when you failed. I've actually had that one in an interview. Why should I hire you? I ask that one in the interviews that we do. What's your 5 to 10 year plan? What are your salary requirements? So again, we can use examples from in our working environment, our class projects, volunteer work you've done, athletics, if you were part of a team, you were part of a student group. So there's all sorts of sources that we can be using to answer some of these questions. And then we talked about the STAR approach, right? So we want to have a nice, concise answer. We don't want to ramble, but we want to say, this was the situation. Here was the task I was tasked with. Here's the action I took, and here was the result. So we can obviously do mock interviews through our office as well to help you practice for that. There is another cool tool that's AI generated called Theo, which I'll send a link about afterwards. That's a cool one that's just brand new as of this semester to help practice interviews as well. And then it says mock interview with career services. So we can talk about all the things, including how to negotiate salary, if you have multiple job offers, all that kind of stuff. So let's go into just one of these for a second. Daryl, which ones of these have you asked of candidates in an interview, and what are you looking for?
Why should we hire you? Once in a while, I'll throw that out there, right? But to be honest, my interviews are conversations, right? You gain so much more knowledge about the individual, not just firing 5 or 6 random questions and writing them down and says, well, thank you for that. We'll get back to you and let you know. One thing I will say, I never ask it, tell me about yourself. I'll ask them, what do you know about RMA, right? But I'll never say, tell me about yourself. If you ever get that question, here's a little hint. If you ever get that question, tell me about yourself, it usually means the person isn't ready for the interview. They were thrown out of a meeting. Hey, Bob, can you do this interview? The person's in the conference room. So they run in there, they sit down, they haven't even looked at your resume. So they'll just break the ice and say, tell me about yourself, right? So here's a good reply. Say, you know what? I would love to tell you about myself. In fact, I could probably spend the next 3 hours talking about me because I'm the subject matter expert. But in respect of your time and mine, where would you like me to start? So at that point, it throws it back to the interviewer, and that person will then look at your resume and says, well, you know what, Jim, tell me why you chose the University of Maryland or George Mason University, right? Or they'll say, you know what, I see your resume. I know what you've done. What do you like to do outside of work and school, right? What are your hobbies? Because that person may be interviewing to find the right person for their specific department. Right? They're looking for more of the cultural fit. Someone may say, well, why did you pick accounting? Or why did you pick data analytics as a major? Right? So now whatever answer that you come up with is going to mean something, and the person is now interested. I find that a lot, that when people ask the question, tell me about yourself, they'll just go regurgitate their resume. Well, I'm really a student at George Mason. I graduate Mason. It's like, at that point, you're excited telling your story, and the person's just simply writing on the top of the page, not a fit, right? Because they didn't hear what they wanted to hear, but they didn't ask the right question. That's why you have to sort of probe a little deeper and say, where do you want me to start? Well, where in the resume would you like me to talk about, right? So it's a good hint because it gives you the opportunity to say something that's meaningful for the person that's sitting across from you or in a virtual meeting. So.
Yeah, and I've done it too, where it's almost like a menu of options where if they say, tell me about yourself, I have something prepared, so I'll just say, well, originally got my degree in psych, went to a master's program in counseling, got halfway through that, discovered I did not want to be a therapist. So that's when I pivoted to career counseling. And since then, I've worked in the nonprofit world. I've worked for higher education. I've helped veterans find their next job, and everything in between. So happy to discuss it. So now I've kind of given them this menu of options. Feel free to ask me about what parts intrigue you about my story. And this can kind of go to the elevator pitch too that we covered in some other classes, right? So I am a crisis counselor turned construction worker turned career advisor. And there's my, part of my interesting intro. And if they want to hear more about one piece or the other, they can select from that. So I'm still prepared to answer that response. But again, here's the menu of options. I've touched on some areas. Feel free to probe more, which you might be interested in, rather than, as you're saying, Daryl, I'm going to regurgitate what you can see in front of you on this resume. And hopefully you're not, hopefully I want the person who's prepared, not the one who's yanked out of a meeting and hasn't seen my resume yet. But that happens. That certainly happens. So
That's quite a bit, yeah.
yeah. Okay. So we talk about preparing when you just physically preparing too, like you want to know where that is in advance. You want to leave yourself plenty of time if it's an in-person interview to, arrive early. It's okay to have a nice pad folio to write stuff down. I sometimes have went into interviews where I had my questions for them written down, for the end. So if they say at the end, do you have any questions for us? That's okay if I didn't have everything like memorized off the top of my head. I might be able to think of a couple, but I like to have, we'll get into this in a little bit here. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I like to have at least 10 questions prepared because some of them you're going to answer during the interview. So Daryl might have answered half of my questions and I don't want to sound like an idiot and say, oh, tell me about RMA, and like there's some question they've already answered and it looks like I wasn't paying attention. So I like to have extra questions available so that just in case they answered some of those during the course of the interview, I have some others prepared that haven't been answered yet. Okay. So again, totally appropriate to bring paper and pencil. I like to bring copies of my resume. So Daryl, to your point, somebody gets thrown into this interview that they weren't expecting on their end. You're the person who looks prepared. And I have, 8 copies of my resume that I can just pass out. And I'm the one who's the most organized. And that's, a really good impression. We talked about plan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there was a comment about bringing a pen and paper and stuff or notes to the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I highly recommend bringing a notepad or pen. I've had students show up at RMA and the first thing the manager will tell me coming out of the meeting, like they didn't write anything down. They didn't have anything to write on. Do they even care, Daryl? I'm like, yeah, they care. They're good people, So it's all perception, right? It's like when you watch the news and they're fumbling through their papers. There's nothing on those papers. It just looks more formal, right? Like they know their information. So you don't see them reading. They're just kind of like fumbling through it, right? They keep picking up the same paper, like just leave it. It's fine, right? So pen and paper, copies of your resume, just in case that particular recruiter didn't print them, so that way you can hand them out if necessary. It shows your preparedness. You're ready to, pinch whenever necessary. Business professional, even if it's just a collared shirt and a jacket. I've seen people show up in, hoodies. Like seriously, wow, okay. I know you want to represent your school, but now's not the time, right? So. Or sometimes I'll get a text saying, oh, I'm running a little late. You've known about this interview for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Why are you running late, right?
Right.
If it takes an hour, leave 2 hours before. Get a cup of coffee. There's plenty of places around Arlington where you can just relax, get your thoughts together as opposed to rushing and everything else too. So
yeah. I would rather arrive early and be killing time in my car, or before an interview than being frantic and showing up out of sorts. One of the questions too that I liked in here was, do interviewers notice if, you're obviously nervous in that interview and sometimes you don't like the silence or you're trying to think of something to say. So they use the example, if I say like, or basically, or kind of filler words, does that influence your hiring decision?
no,
Okay.
we all do it.
No.
right? I've got a senior manager that always says, what's the word? Yep. So when you have a good, you say, yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's just, as long as it's not like I just said myself, right? It's not as if it's not something that sounds scripted, right? But just, I know you're nervous. I know but here's the way to look at it, right? The company is interviewing you, but more importantly, you're interviewing the company or the firm, right? This is your decision when you graduate. You've spent 4 years, you've got your degree. Now it's up to you to figure out, are they the right company as well, too? So if you kind of look at it that way and you're interviewing us in the same way that we're interviewing you, it kind of takes the nerves off of you, right? So practice in front of a mirror, right? Practice with family members or friends. When you answer a question, what do you look like, right? Are you nervous in front of them, right? These are people that you know all the time. So how do you get over that edge, right? So it's important. I always do a prep session before every interview, right? I send that invitation to students to say, hey, if you'd like to do a prep a week before the meeting, I'm more than welcome to. I would say 50% take me up on it. I can't figure out the other 50.
Yeah. Well, and keep in mind too, I mean, that's what we're here for. So if you have an interview coming up and you want to practice, go ahead, and you can either do our drop-ins, or it's better off to schedule appointments so we have longer to discuss the, feedback and all that kind of good stuff. So,
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear, Dale, your response to this too. Questions that you can prepare to ask the employer. I've always asked, because again, part of this is, I felt that when you get to that interview stage, ideally the person has seen your resume and that you've passed step one, right? They like what they see. Now this part of it is more about, are you somebody I want to work with? Can you build a relationship with me? Do you have, can you build rapport easily? Do you sound intelligent? All this kind of stuff. So questions that I've asked is, what's your favorite thing about working here? What's the biggest challenge? Do you find that people kind of like stay here for life, or is there a lot of turnover? What was the biggest surprise when you started working here? Like, just sort of some of the things are like, get to know you. You can get into more of the weeds too with if there's questions they haven't asked specifically about that position. And then if they haven't answered that question towards the very end, I'd like to know, when are you hoping to make a decision? What professional development opportunities do you offer? Daryl, what are some of the ones that kind of stand out for candidates to you and you think, oh, that was a really good question?
I think I've got questions like, why did this position become open? Is it because of turnover, or are you growing?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a great question to ask, right? You don't want to be part of a company that's constantly turning over employees, right? You don't want to be part of that. But if it's a growth opportunity, then that sounds good, right? So when do you hope to make a decision? As in sales, you're trying to close the sale, right? How soon can I hear back from yourself or the recruiter regarding your decision on my, opportunity? So Make sure you ask that question, because again, if you don't ask the question, it leaves the interviewer wondering, are they interested? Maybe they're not, right? And that's fine, because we have others that we're looking at this point. But you may be like chomping at the bit, ready to start, right? But you didn't close the sale. Ask for the next steps, right? What are the next steps in the process? So, how would you describe the culture of the company, right? How do you, as Kelly had said, what made you join RMA, and what are some of the things that you enjoy while working there? What are some of the challenges that you deal with at RMA? Right, so you want to hear the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? How would you describe your management style if you're interviewing with a senior manager? Right? You want to kind of get to know this individual, especially if that's the direct hire that you'll be reporting to. Is this someone that I can work with? Right? Again, you're interviewing the company. Very important. Here's one thing I've always realized: people don't join companies; people join people. Right? doesn't matter what the name of the company outside the building says. If you like the conversation, if you enjoyed the conversation, if you feel comfortable with the individual that you've met with, just realize that person, you're probably going to be spending more time with that individual than your own family. So you better kind of like the person. So
Yeah.
find out more about them too, right? So what else? What characteristics and skills would a person need to be successful in this job? Right. And as you're listening to the answer, do I have those skills and characteristics? Do I want to be that person that they're looking for? No, I want to be me. So maybe this isn't the right opportunity. Again, you're making the decision. It's both ways.
One
And
of
I
the
tell
questions.
during the prep session, just make sure this is the right opportunity for you, right? Dig deeper. This is the best way to figure out if RMA is the right opportunity for you. Our acceptance rate is 90%.
Wow.
It's high.
Yeah.
So most people that I vet through the process and send through are good individuals that the hiring managers like, and they have realized, wow, this is pretty cool to work here. So.
One of the other questions that we got to was around how many questions can I ask? You know, does it have to be around 3 to 4? And I think part of that is determined by how much time you have left in the interview. So you want to be respectful of their time. You know, I don't want 25 questions at the end. But again, to Daryl's point, it is a mutual interview, right? You want to know if this is a good fit for you and vice versa. So I would customize that, you know, pick the ones that I really want to know off, you know, at the very top. And then depending on time, you can always just ask, do I have time for one more question? Daryl, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, important to find out how many people you'll be interviewing with, right? So if it's 3 people, well, if you have 6 questions, then ask two questions per person. What happens is they'll meet with the first person, ask all 6 questions, and then meet with the second and third person, the third person being the most important decision maker. And that person says, do you have any questions? Like, no, I don't, because they've been answered earlier. And that person will then go back after the meeting and says that he or she didn't ask any questions. I'm not interested. Right? So divide up the questions depending on the number of individuals. If it's one person, I would keep it 3 or 4, right? And especially if the meeting is running later than expected, then kind of keep it brief because obviously people are busy. So
Perfect. And then there's a link there to which you'll get in the PowerPoint afterwards, the best questions to ask an interviewer if you're trying to rack your brain. We talked about arriving early. One of the things too that an employer said was, I would hire character over competence because I can teach you the hard skills. I cannot teach you to smile and be enthusiastic and treat people nicely. And so that kind of speaks to what we, you know, referenced earlier about, I already know that you have maybe the hard skills that I'm looking for based on your resume. What I'm trying to feel out is if you're somebody I'd want to work with. And so we talk about, you know, you see on this slide, having a firm handshake, a smile, sounding enthusiastic, you know, trying to avoid rambling. This is again why we practice speaking clearly. You know, if you're a fast talker, maybe slow it down a little bit. Controlling nervous habits, tapping your foot, clicking your pen, all that kind of stuff. And that's where, Daryl, to your point, practicing in front of that mirror, because you will see some things that you wouldn't normally pick up on, right?
Oh, I do that? Really? I didn't realize that. Yeah. When you answer a question, you keep looking up and to the left, right? Be careful of that. Handshakes, just wait. A lot of times people don't do handshakes anymore. So just, again, mimic the behavior of the interviewer. So go back. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. It's been beaten with a horse, but it's so important, right? Your energy, your enthusiasm, and it's okay to say, hey, I'm actually really nervous because I'm excited about this opportunity. So I'm just happy to be here. So just put it out there. They'll be like, hey, don't be nervous. Just sit down and we'll just relax, you know? So sometimes by saying it, you're getting it out, and now you feel a little better, right? When you try to hide it, then you realize, wow, am I hiding it good enough? Can they tell I'm nervous? Then you start overthinking all those things, and then before you know it, yeah, you look really nervous, and you're probably going to blow the interview. So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind.
Yeah. And again, that enthusiasm goes a long way, and it's very forgiving if you, again, don't have perfect responses or anything like that. So with the virtual interview, which I've had several of, here's a bunch of tips here. We want to make sure that we don't have, in my case, especially when I'm working from home, there's 2 dogs in the background. And so we want to make sure that they are outside and not heard. Same thing if you have roommates. I had somebody record an interview and they were in their basement and the person came down behind with the laundry. It was super distracting, and I'm sure they were like, not now. So if you have roommates, live at home, again, move those pets somewhere else, find a quiet space. There is actually spots on campus. You can certainly contact our office or University Career Services if you need a nice quiet place to do an interview. We just had a student utilize our space last week for that, so don't hesitate to reach out if you're nervous about maybe finding a quiet space to do that. Obviously, we want to check the quality of our sound, make sure that it's nice and brightly lit. I've had it too where I've absolutely had my laptop, on a stack of books so that I'm looking head on with the camera and all that kind of good stuff, and mute your notifications. Oh my gosh. I don't know, Daryl, if you've ever seen this, but I have seen this a lot more recently in both recorded interviews, which sometimes you will have for jobs where you have to record your responses in advance, but also even in live interviews where somebody is clearly reading me an answer off a screen. And that is not what I'm looking for at all. And is an immediate no. So it's again, it is better to sound, I would rather hear somebody use 35 times and sound nervous and not have the perfect response but seem genuinely excited about the job versus, hi, my name is Kelly. I'm really excited about this position with RMA Associates. I feel that I would be the best fit because, I don't want an interview a robot.
Do you call them out, Kelly?
Well, sometimes sometimes it's been pre-recorded. So I send back feedback and just say, this sounds like it was read from a screen. I was looking for natural responses. And of course, our job is to coach people through it too. So have you ever run into anything like that?
Oh yeah. I just say, stop reading. Just tell me, be honest, right? Yep. I don't need a script.
Right.
This isn't a movie.
Yeah. So I did reference this earlier. We do have an AI tool that is brand new this semester. It is called Costello Career AI, or Theo is like the tool you use within the platform. And this will give you feedback. But again, don't hesitate to reach out to us to schedule one-on-one mock interviews. You can even research company questions to practice for specific roles. A lot of people, I've seen this too, post their experiences on YouTube, what questions they were asked, or even like from a recruiter standpoint, what they're looking for. This is sort of what the Costello Career AI tool looks like. You can also, there's a section in here to not only practice interview questions, but to practice your elevator pitch, work on your resume, and you can even design it to ask you specific interview questions. So that's certainly available to you.
Oh, Kelly, real quick on Glassdoor.
Yeah.
You'll actually, people will put a review on how the interview went.
Yeah.
And questions that you were asked. And I've actually seen people post what I asked them as well too. Like Daryl was very conversational. He didn't ask a lot of questions. He just gauged kind of the cultural fit within the firm. So you'll find out a lot on Glassdoor as well too, what the exact questions were at each stage of the interview process as well. So there's your little cheat sheet, right? So you're going into it a little bit more positive and more confident.
I thought you were going to say that you responded with, yes, Daryl is amazing. Isn't he just the best?
Oh, I get that all the time. I just don't want to start repeating myself. So.
Right. So we have sort of alluded to it, again, when you're reading a response, it is okay to get some ideas from AI. Everybody's using it, and that's it's okay, right? Employers actually expect you to know how to use it. But keep in mind, we have certainly had, in fact, I was having a discussion with a recruiter from KPMG, and they were talking about how they had blatantly run into people who had used AI on their resume, because when they got to that interview and the recruiter was saying, "Oh, tell me more about this," and the student kind of would give them a blank response, like, "What did I say now? What was that on the resume?" Because they had used ChatGPT to come up with the perfect statement, and then it wasn't accurate. So when it's okay again to get ideas for hard interview questions, and some, here's my resume. If I'm asked this question, what could be some things I could bring up? It's again, it's just generating ideas. We do not want to get into speak and spell robot mode, where everything is so rehearsed it doesn't sound natural, right,
Yeah.
Daryl?
You may get through the interview process with the recruiter, but once you get to the hiring manager, these individuals are pretty bright. They'll figure it out, right? So there's a lot of steps along the way. So just be yourself at the end of the day. That's the most important thing.
I just want to also just do a little warning that you don't ever put your personal information in ChatGPT or any AI platforms, because it does remember it. So no home address, no cell phone number, no email. Keep that part out of it. So a lot of people copy and paste their whole resume into ChatGPT, and they're saying, "Okay, based on this, come up with a star statement for this question." So it's again okay to use some of the stuff from your resume and get ideas, but just make sure you're not copying and pasting your personal information in there. So some of the AI prompts that you can use would be, how do I prepare for common interview questions for this particular role? What star statements could I use? And again, use the job posting compared to your resume. I'm not going to read these all, but again, you are getting this copy of the PowerPoint afterwards. So you'll be able to see what some of these prompts are, but how, and especially for this tough interview questions. I also just want to do a little shout out here. It says, what are 3 strengths that I can address? We are actually doing a strengths workshop this semester. This will be the first time. And it's going to be, I'm staring off into space because I have my calendar right above me, turning strengths into success. And that's going to be on October 23rd from 3 to 4. And that is using the Clifton Strengths Finder to identify what your strengths are. And this really helps give you some verbiage for both strengths and weaknesses, should you ever get asked about that. So one of my strengths, I have them written here in front of me, is positivity, right? That would be a really good one to bring up in interview, right? I am all about positivity. I try to bring a positive vibe to the work environment. Here's an example. I would have it worked into a star statement of a time that I do that. Like morale was really low. I made sure I bought lunch for the whole office because we were really dealing with a hard time. And it's important to me that everybody feels like they're part of the team and valued, and et cetera, et cetera. So that can be a really helpful. And Lynn, if you wouldn't mind looking that up and popping that into our chat, the handshake link for that workshop. Again, that is going to be on October 23rd, which is a Thursday. So I guess next Thursday from 3 to 4. But that can help you with some of those questions and answers. And then here's some other prompts. Again, as I mentioned, AI does not replace a person-to-person mock interview. And kind of, Daryl, what you mentioned earlier too, is you don't even do like the virtual. Like I want to see somebody sitting down and being able to read the cues and the enthusiasm level and all this kind of stuff in person, right?
Because at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for, right? I think Kelly mentioned it near the beginning of this session. Any company out there will teach you everything that you'll need to know from the ground up. What they can't teach is the soft skills that you bring, your enthusiasm, your energy, those things, right? The ability to communicate as you move up the chain of command. Are you someone that they can see sitting in front of a government official doing a presentation for RMA, right? Those are things you can't teach. Everything else, it's not rocket science, right? As long as you're smart and you're willing to learn, you can get it done. So
yeah. A good question that we had that I wanted to make sure we got to, which I thought was a good one, was if you start feeling during that interview this is not a good fit for you, and I have absolutely had that experience during an interview, should we tell them, was the question. And I would say absolutely not. You still go through the interview and sound professional and all the things and thank them for their time. But, it's again, this is a two-way street. You're trying to figure out if this is a good fit for you as well as whether you're a good fit for them. So you don't ever want to burn a bridge, right? You don't know. Again, this is even though DC seems like a big place, it's a small world. And so you don't certainly want to get to the end and say, well, this isn't for me. Thanks so much. Bye. So, Daryl, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Just realize, especially in the federal consulting world, all the presidents, the CEOs, they all know each other. I've had people that interviewed with Castro and Company, and they come to me and says, "Yeah, I interviewed Castro. I wasn't really too happy with their interview process. And I met with some of the hiring managers, and I said, well, just be careful when you say that, because Thomas Castro is best friends with Resume about our president."
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
So, keep it to yourself, right? So just,
Right.
again, the HR person for Castro might be married to the HR person in our company. There's so
Yes.
many connections that you never want to burn a bridge. And who knows, at some point during your career, that person may come full circle and assist you and help you, right?
Yeah.
So just maybe not have any questions at the end. Maybe I'll
Right.
give them a hint, right? Do you have any
Yeah.
questions? Actually, I don't. I think you answered most of them through the conversations that we had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so they're not really interested, but at least they're professional.
Right. And
So-
again, too, as far as that network, you don't know who they know, and maybe you want
No,
down
no.
the road to
Mhm.
circle back. So, and Lynn, I appreciate you did put the link for Daryl's upcoming coffee chat into our chat here. So if anybody wants to join Daryl for our coffee chat, that's in here. Megan, thanks. She actually posted the interview questions article that was in our link. Study rooms in the JC and the Fenwick are also great interview spaces. Thank you, Megan, for that. Somebody just said, thank you. Is using this tool free? Yes, it is. Theo is absolutely free. And then there's Lynn dropped the link for our strengths workshop in there. And yes, we should be all good. And then there's that coffee chat link in there too. So other than that, let me just make sure that we have kind of went through our slides. We talk about here, answering questions in the STAR situation, like we talked about, that tell me of a time. Here's some of the behavioral questions that often pop up. What is your biggest accomplishment, strengths and weaknesses? Tell me of a time you were successful. Tell me of a time you weren't successful. Sometimes you'll get the HR people, or non-HR people, I should say, doing interviews who don't realize that they're asking you questions that they shouldn't be asking. Not everybody is a seasoned HR professional. And so sometimes that will pop up. So you can decide, you can always answer, can you tell me how that pertains to the job posting or this particular job? And then, of course, here's some questions that are legal. So again, are you eligible to work in the States? How long did you stay in your last role? I've had people work around too, necessarily with, if I'm calling a previous employer, my understanding is they couldn't ask if you were fired, but they could certainly ask if you would hire them again. And so that also speaks volumes, right? We talked about preparing where the interview is held, knowing that location, getting there in plenty of time. We talked a little bit about the tell me about yourself response and what's appropriate there, what to bring to an interview, copies of your resume, dress professionally. We want to make sure, and Daryl, I'd love your 2 cents on this, even though I know we're running out of time here, but when you have somebody, and I'm sure you've run across this, who has reneged on a deal, and how that does not, again, it's a small world. And so this does not look good for you as the student if you said yes and then decided, oops, no thanks, especially if Daryl thought he had hired everybody he needed to for the whole semester, and now you have decided, now that you've graduated, you've taken another offer. So Daryl, anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I don't necessarily hold it against someone, right? And neither do the leadership team from us. We all know that you have options. We'd rather hear it before you start than when you start in 2 months and you're like, I don't know, this is for me, right? So sometimes it's a good thing, and that's the way our president looks at it. He goes, hey, at least they told us now, as opposed to spending the time to mentor and train and coach, and then they decide to leave. So yeah, I always leave the door open. It says, if anything changes in your current policy or current situation, please contact me. We can revisit the whole situation again. So and they're very thankful for that too. So.
And then, I mean, we've certainly had it too, like the flip side where somebody negotiated starting in a few months. And so the job was closed and then they decided they didn't want it after all. And it cost us months and months because it's a long process, hiring process here on the higher ed side of it. We want to make sure too, and I will say that definitely people who have applied stand out if they follow up with a thank you for your time. I'm really excited about the opportunity. Was there any questions I could answer? Or if sometimes I've done it where I felt like I didn't answer a question as fully as I could have. And so I would just want to reiterate, and then maybe I go into a little more detail there. But again, it doesn't need to be a encyclopedia worth of information. We just want to short and sweet, thank them for their time, address anything that we didn't get to discuss or reiterate something. And again, here's our office, which you are welcome to schedule an appointment with anytime, as well as drop-in hours. And here is our social media pages. You can follow us on LinkedIn. A lot of times we'll post jobs on our LinkedIn page that you won't find on Handshake. For employers, for one reason or another, might reach out to us and say, hey, can you just, blast us on your social media? We're not doing a post on Handshake. And so we will do that for employers. So it's would behoove you all to take out that phone and scan that LinkedIn and our Instagram page there. And I think that is it. So I'll leave that up for a second. I wanted to, we'll hang out for a second here, but Daryl, I wanted to thank you for your time. I appreciate your 2 cents. Again, Daryl's going to be here for the coffee chat. So that link is in the chat there. And for those who want to identify their strengths and kind of the flip side of that, you can do our strengths workshop that's coming up. And again, that link is also in our chat. So any parting words, Daryl?
Yeah, that last slide, thank you. I probably get 40% of candidates to send a thank you. Unbelievable. Yeah. That's such a powerful way to sort of cap that bookend, right? The first impression, last impression. Did they thank us? No, I never got an email back or any thank you. I had one student that actually wrote me a thank you note, and I got it in the mail at the office. We were on the fence with her because the GPA wasn't that great. She was trying to relocate from Washington State. As soon as I got that, I sent it to the president and said, President, look what I got. And he goes, make her an offer. That's unbelievable, right? You just don't know how that can sway in your favor. Just a simple thank you email. It's not hard. Just do it. It'll make a difference. I promise you. Because not a lot of people are doing it. So that's all I have.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for your time, Daryl. And again, we'll be seeing you on campus soon. Yeah. We've answered all the questions in our chat. I just want to thank everyone for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Kate.